Chapter 8: The Need for a Cover Story. When I was working in a huge office a few years ago, there was a woman, I'll call her Sarah, who was having a miserable affair with a married man, the office Romeo, although to keep the Shakespeare theme going, I'll call him King Lear. Sarah was an extremely intelligent, attractive, independent woman. King Lear, on the other hand, was a selfish, conceited twerp with no feelings for Sarah, his wife, or the myriad of other women he was chasing round the office. If you're male, I'm sorry if I'm letting the side down with this blasphemous anti-male stuff, but you wouldn't have liked this guy either. Every time King Lear disappeared with another woman for an extended lunch, Sarah insisted that he had family problems that needed attending to. When people pointed out that he'd already betrayed his wife, she insisted this was because his wife had treated him badly. When people pointed out that this was King Lear's umpteenth affair, she said it was because he was insecure. When people pointed out that he was openly boasting that she was just one of many, she insisted it was just office gossip and that he must have been misquoted. In fact, Sarah had carefully prepared cover stories for every eventuality, so in the end, people finally stopped warning her about King Lear and his testosterone-fueled rampage. It all went wrong. But as soon as Sarah realized what type of individual King Lear really was, the truth flooded in, her fear of losing him disappeared, and her affair effectively ended by itself. Now, years after it happened, what do you think Sarah would make of the cover stories if they were put to her? Would she still insist that they were reasonable? Probably not. The point is, her cover stories weren't reasoned, factual arguments. They were generated through necessity, through fear and anxiety. They allowed her to keep hold of an illusion. But without the illusion itself, why would she need them anymore? The answer is she wouldn't. They only ever existed to allow her to maintain a false view of her situation, because the real situation would have hurt her too much if she'd accepted it. Now ask yourself whether you find the following situation hurtful. Ask yourself whether you really want to accept the following summary of yourself as a smoker. You smoke because your subconscious mind can't tell the difference between the physical tension caused by the delayed effects of nicotine and the physical tension caused by genuine fear or anxiety. As a result, your subconscious mind keeps panicking and trying to get rid of this sensation by telling you to smoke, which simply reduces it for a few minutes while causing it all over again. But your subconscious mind doesn't know that smoking causes this sensation because it's a delayed effect. So it gradually became more and more anxious and told you to smoke more and more cigarettes, which just keeps causing this feeling of tension all over again. You've fallen for the oldest trick in the book, and you may end up dying as a result. Be honest, it's hardly ideal, is it? So, let's have a think. What I'm looking for is a handful of plausible-sounding cover stories to enable you to keep your affair with cigarettes going without facing up to the depressing truth about why you really smoke. Give me a moment or two. Bingo, I've got it. How about these? Smoking makes it easier for you to concentrate. Smoking makes you more confident. Smoking helps you to keep your weight down. Smoking is a habit. Now, before I go any further, I'm fully aware that one or more of these beliefs probably do sound plausible to you. The reason they sound plausible is because until you fully understand the nicotine trick, they are plausible. When you smoked your second ever cigarette, the subconscious part of your brain was tricked into thinking that you'd just relieved genuine fear or stress. In fact, all you really did was temporarily reduce a sensation that simply felt like stress or fear while creating this sensation all over again. But you didn't know this at the time, did you? If you had known it, you'd have correctly surmised that your subconscious mind was reacting irrationally. After all, what normal, self-respecting person would allow part of their brain to malfunction without doing something? It would have been too humiliating. So you needed a reason, one that sounded plausible, one that would allow you to hold your head up high and claim, or rather admit to being a smoker without immediately bursting into tears of shame, embarrassment, and despair. I suspect you're feeling a little uncomfortable at this point, and this is only natural. This book isn't easy reading, and I make no apologies for that. But let's lighten it up a bit. Let's play a game, role play. I want you to pretend for the next few minutes that you've never smoked in your life. Assume I'm a senior salesman for the cigarette industry, and I'm trying to get you to smoke just 2 cigarettes. My sales manager has explained to me that it's absolutely crucial that I get you to smoke 2 cigarettes rather than just 1. Here's why. The first cigarette will knock you absolutely sick. It will irritate your central nervous system, your lungs, your stomach, and all your internal organs. The radioactive smoke will get in your nose and throat and make you cough, and the combination of poisons and irritants might even cause you to vomit. Your immediate reaction will be one of extreme disgust and disappointment. One major scientific report correctly describes a smoker's first cigarette as a noxious pharmacological experience. In other words, smoking a cigarette is not just unpleasant, but extremely unpleasant, at least to start with. But an hour or so after smoking a cigarette, something very strange and subtle will happen. Your subconscious mind will become aware of a vague physical sensation similar to fear, even though this will be nothing more than an artificial chemical sensation that simply feels like fear or anxiety. As a cigarette salesman, I happen to know something else. If, like hundreds of millions of people, you don't smoke a second cigarette, your subconscious mind will automatically reach exactly the correct conclusion, which is that cigarettes make you feel physically tense and uneasy about an hour after smoking them and do not give pleasure or relaxation. You won't need to persuade yourself that this is the case. Your subconscious mind will do it for you, whether you like it or not. If this happens, both your conscious and subconscious minds will be in total agreement. There will be no conflict, no confusion, and therefore no phobia. Of course, you'll feel a bit uneasy and physically tense for 3 or 4 days because you smoked a cigarette, but you'll hardly even notice it, and it will be gone before you know it. As a cigarette salesman, I'm painfully aware of this fact, and this is precisely why my sales manager has told me I need to make sure you smoke a second cigarette while you're still feeling tense from the effects of the first one, because otherwise you'll never fall for the nicotine trick. Your affair with cigarettes won't start because the false connection on which it's based won't be established, and that's no use to me. As a cigarette salesman, I'm not going to make much commission from selling just one cigarette, even at UK prices. I've only got one single chance to trap you, and it's based on a secret piece of inside information that has been deliberately hidden from hundreds of millions of smokers. You see, I happen to know that if I can somehow get you to smoke a second cigarette, it will be just as disgusting as the first one, but before the nicotine in this cigarette causes yet more physical tension, it will briefly reduce the feeling of physical tension caused by the nicotine in the previous cigarette. By itself, this will mean absolutely nothing, because this feeling of tension isn't painful in any way, and it won't be fear or anxiety, but it will be a sensation that your subconscious mind mistakes for fear and anxiety. And because your subconscious mind mistakes it for fear and anxiety, it will believe that reducing it by smoking this second cigarette has made you feel less frightened and anxious. And that's why, if I can somehow find a way to trick you into smoking this second cigarette, I'll be getting you to step into an absolute nightmare, a burning wheel that you'll then be forced to push round and round for the rest of your life without ever moving you forwards an inch, taking away your health, peace of mind, and happiness, and making money for me and my faceless corporate bosses with each desperate spin of the wheel. Now for the really big question. As a cigarette salesman, how am I going to trick you into smoking these two cigarettes in the first place? Well, why don't we try something right now? Why don't I try selling you on the idea of smoking these two cigarettes based on some of the reasons smokers actually give for smoking? I want you to imagine how they'd sound coming from me in my guise as a cigarette salesman. So let's set it up. You're the curious non-smoker and I'm the cigarette salesman. You've not yet smoked either of the cigarettes I'm holding out to you. You're not convinced. You've heard some bad stories about cigarettes. You've heard that cigarette smoke contains a chemical called polonium-210, which gives off radiation inside your lungs and causes tumors to start growing and ripping your lungs apart. I'm extremely alarmed that you know this. My eyes narrow, my fake smile falters slightly, and I blush slightly underneath my equally fake tan, but I manage to recover before you notice. Then I start my pitch. I tell you that smoking will improve your concentration. Immediately you say, I don't think so. Every smoker I've ever seen is driven to distraction by anxiety and stress. How can continual physical tension possibly do anything except destroy my concentration? I'm taken aback by your knowledge and by your perfectly sound logic, so I decide on another approach. I tell you that smoking will make you more confident. Immediately you say, I don't think so. Are you telling me that I'll be more confident when I've got yellow teeth, stinking breath, and eyes like dropped blood samples? Now I'm really shaken, but I decide to have one more go. I tell you that smoking will help you lose weight. Maybe you're not overweight, but just imagine you are for the purposes of this. Immediately you say, I don't think so. I can lose weight by cutting out one meal a day and doing some exercise, or at least I can while I've not had my arms and legs amputated because of smoking. Stop the clock, stand back, and ask yourself a question. Why do so many smokers claim to believe this bullshit? The answer is depressingly simple. They weren't asked to believe it before they started smoking, but afterwards when they no longer had a choice. Wes, do you honestly think you would have said that before you started inhaling poisons? Don't forget that, as a cigarette salesman, I work for one of the most dishonest and cynical industries on the face of the planet. Do you really think I'd unleash these unique selling points on you before you started smoking? Do you honestly believe I'd be stupid enough to let you argue with me from a position of strength, or do you think I'd force you to your knees first? That's why I know you're going to lose all interest in smoking cigarettes, because by explaining the position you're really in, I'm going to show you how to get up off your knees. And make no mistake, right from the moment you smoked your second cigarette, that's where you were, on your knees, tricked, deceived, frightened, outsmarted, just like I was. Think back to the very beginning of your affair with cigarettes. Were you ever given the real facts before you started smoking? Did the cigarette industry ever have the decency and honesty to send a couple of their senior people round to see you when you were 11 and say, hello, I'm Mr. Benson and this is Mr. Hedges. We're from the Golden Polonium Cigarette Company. The thing is, we'd like you to throw away your money, your health, your self-esteem, and eventually your life on a product that will create a permanent state of a chemically induced anxiety, a product that will inconvenience and humiliate you thousands of times before you finally drop dead 20 years early. Incidentally, this product contains a lethal radioactive element called polonium-210, which will leak radiation inside your lungs. When they cremate you, your ashes will glow in the dark. Sign here, please. Are you angry? Are you embarrassed? If you are embarrassed, good, you should be embarrassed. Why should I tell you otherwise? If the cigarette industry broke into your house and wrecked all your furniture, you'd call the police. But you've let them into your mind. You've let them. Chapter 9, Introduction to Excuses. Before getting stuck into the first cover story, let's remind ourselves once again of why you smoke. This fact will protect you for the rest of your life, but only when you're absolutely, totally confident in it. So let's make sure you are. The nicotine in cigarette smoke causes a delayed feeling of physical tension, which your subconscious mind mistakes for fear or anxiety. Smoking, while creating this tension, briefly reduces it first. This tricks your subconscious mind into believing that smoking makes you more relaxed. But smoking can't reduce genuine anxiety. It can only reduce the synthetic anxiety caused by the previous cigarette. Just read that again. Remember that it's backed up by your own experience, dozens of scientific reports, and the experience of every smoker who's ever lived. Now, I'm going to ask you to read it one more time. Read it slowly. Think about it. Make sure you digest it. Start trying to feel it. Match it against the last cigarette you smoked and the one before that. If you're between cigarettes right now, concentrate hard on what you're feeling, and you'll see that everything I've been telling you is true. An underlying state of mild, chemically induced agitation caused by the delayed